Hey everyone, welcome in. Today we're going to switch things up a little bit. We're going to have a little bit different of a platform. This conversation is going to be a little bit more serious and a little bit more in detail. So welcome to the show. My name is Bobby Jones, aka Mr. Brightside, and our guest today is Josh Wilkinson. So Josh was involved in a very unfortunate situation at the James T. Vaughn Correctional Facility back in 2017, actually just 3 years ago, really just a few days past, and was involved in the hostage situation where unfortunately Lieutenant Floyd lost his life. And Officer Wilkinson here, Josh, was also part of the hostage situation and was held against his will for quite some time there. So we're going to go into some detail here. One of the things that's really interesting about this dynamic is I was actually, as most of you probably know by now, I was in prison for quite a bit, in and out, but quite significantly, in 2004, I was in James T. Vaughn during the previous hostage situation where the gentleman, I think his name, Scott Miller, took one of the counselors hostage. We were actually locked down for 2 days on that, and he ended up losing his life when SWAT came through the ceiling and killed him while the hostage was freed. So it's really interesting to be on this side of the table talking to you as a former inmate, in there when there was a previous hostage situation, and you as a former CO during that hostage situation and actually being held. So this is really, really interesting. So, Josh, we're going to get into this a little bit, and I think the best way to go about this, and this is an organic conversation because you and I haven't even gone this detail yet, and talking about like your involvement in corrections. How long had you been a correctional officer when this happened?
I started the academy the summer before, so summer of 2016. I graduated the academy November 28th. I was on medical until January 3rd or 4th because I was in a car accident during the academy on my lunch break. So I didn't step foot to Vaughn until January 3rd or 4th.
Of
I
that
was
of
there,
2017.
yeah, I was there
Oh
less than a
wow.
month.
Wow. Okay. All right. So that's pretty interesting then. Yeah, not a good way to start this career out, huh?
No.
Alrighty. So okay, so you weren't into corrections that long, but how had your time there from the moment that you did start until this hostage situation took place? What were some or any significant experiences with inmates or correctional officers in there?
I mean, you could definitely see in my first month, you could see the difference in officers and inmates. Not everyone you found in there was out to harm you. Not everyone, they tell you in the academy, be careful of everyone. Not everyone that you met there was out to harm you. And not every officer was good either. You found officers that pushed the line and talked kind of disrespectfully to certain inmates or all inmates. So you've seen a different side of things. Most of my time was quiet. I kind of sat back, did my own thing, and watched and made my own way of doing things.
Sure, and I could imagine, like, just with just a few days in, a few weeks in, and a month in, there's a point where you get to a level of comfortability, and I don't mean comfortability in a way that you just like sit back and let things go, but you get a little bit more comfortable with your surroundings, you get a little bit
Yeah.
more comfortable with the risks that you're taking each day, and so I can imagine that initially, you're probably kind of taking a back seat to it all and kind of watching and seeing how things play out.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that there was any benefit to the fact that you were kind of fresher out of the academy, like than some of the other officers that were involved? Do you think that there was anything in your training that played into the situation and it had been being fresh in your mind? No?
Not
Okay.
really, no.
Yeah, I was just curious, they popped into my head as you were talking, but all right, so let's go. This is February 1st, right? So
Mm-hmm.
February 1st, 2017, you're starting your day just like you had been starting your day for the past month, right?
Yeah.
And so let's talk about like how your day transpired and how it
Um,
pressed on.
I mean, I came in that day and I got assigned to Charlie building, which was a normal building I'd get assigned to.
Okay.
It was my third time in that particular building, but it was on what we call my team. I was on Team 4, which is set up of certain buildings, and that was my normal team. So I could get placed anywhere in any one of those buildings that is usually on that team roster. So it wasn't different for me to be there, although I hadn't been in that building much.
Okay. So I actually was in C building. I was in C building for a couple of months in 2004. And actually, Chris, if you could switch it back over to, I want to just make sure I understand the buildings and remember the buildings correctly too. So C building is kind of behind D, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm gonna pull it up real quick so that everybody kind of sees what we're talking about here. See if I can close this. So we're looking at C building right here, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then this is D building here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So C building's here. This is where you're starting your day.
Mm-hmm.
And let's talk about what goes on as you get over there to get your day started.
I got in there and I was assigned to Bravo tier. So Sergeant Floyd handed me the keys to B tier, which is the tier right there sticking out.
Okay. The one at the back here?
Yeah, right there.
Okay.
Came in, did my normal counts as usual.
Now, had you worked with Sergeant Floyd before?
I had been in there for about an hour on my first day during training.
Oh, okay.
As I was being led around to different buildings and showed the complex.
Okay.
And I had done the entire shift on the 31st, the day before, in that building.
Okay. So you had some familiarity with the other
bit.
team members and staff and
Yeah.
some of the inmates. I'm assuming too, probably.
Only really one. But
Okay. Okay. Any indicators the day before? I mean, any indicators at all as you were kind of...
Now that I look back, things that I didn't realize, the day before I got put out on yard duty. So you have to stand outside the fence there and watch everyone in the yard.
Mm-hmm.
A group of inmates were standing around, probably 10, 15 inmates, standing
Sure.
around in a circle talking.
Now, now that this is kind of played out and you know which inmates were involved, do you remember those inmates being in that group?
Some of them, yes.
Okay.
And I didn't really think much of it. I kind of figured, okay, well, this is the one time that all three tiers are allowed to meet up. So
Right.
maybe it's just the guys that all know each other. This is the only time they all get to actually be around each other and talk. So maybe they're just BSing, and I kind of blew it off. Now looking back at it,
Now that
there's a good chance they were planning the next day,
Yeah.
and I didn't think of it or realize it.
Yeah. Now, is there anything in the training or anything like that when you see a group like that you're supposed to get involved or no? Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's things like that are so much a judgment call, and it's just
Yeah.
like Monday morning quarterback, and there's it is what it is, and there's nothing that you can go back and change. That's for sure. So, let's talk about how again the morning of February 1st kind of played out as you got in there and got going.
I mean, everything seemed pretty normal. I really didn't have any problems that morning. Everything was going quietly and smoothly. We let everyone out for yard, and everything kind of kicked off when they came back in from yard.
Okay. And so, all right, so everybody's coming back in now. When you're out at yard, the door to the building is locked and secured.
Yes.
Right? But the tier doors are open, correct?
Somewhat.
Okay. So they're coming in from outside, because otherwise you guys would have to be standing at the tier doors open and close as people got into the tier, right? So they got it. So now they're coming in
Well,
from
that
yard.
particular building, we kept the tier doors locked while they were out at yard.
And then
people
opened
would
them.
Would spend their time inside.
Inside, right.
Get
Okay.
showers, do things like
Sure.
that. So during that time, no more than 2 cells can be opened at a time, and the tier door is closed and locked.
Okay. So as you guys are opening the rear door to let people in, the doors to the tiers are being opened up, and then
Yes.
the inmates are supposed to go to their respective tiers,
Yes.
correct? Okay. Good. That's how I remember it anyway. So, alrighty. So that's happening, and you guys are going in. We are now moving towards the different tiers, and so what happens then? What's going on then?
As soon as they came in from yard, they had things covering their face. And by the
Really?
time I realized anything was going on, I heard a code 1. I don't know whether it got called over the radio or It was just being yelled out, and by the time I turned around, I had about 10, 12 inmates rushing me as I was at the doorway to be here.
Mm. What were you thinking in that moment?
Holy shit. There's not much you can think by then.
Right.
You kind of realize this is not a normal day. Usually you might get a fight between inmates. You might get an inmate that wants to fight with a particular officer, but you don't normally see 10 to 12 guys rushing you in a building. By then you kind of have already figured out they're meaning business, they're meaning to take over.
Yeah. Now, the average, well, I know that it's a lot of different sentences in there, but the inmates that are in there, I mean, what's the biggest sentence any of them had to the lowest?
Some of them were in there for life sentences.
Yeah. And some of them were in there for a couple more weeks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. All right. So in that moment, and I'm assuming, you get that many people coming towards you, it's almost like, what's the point to fight, right? Or,
Yeah.
or what were you thinking at that point? Did you resist? Did you fight at
Oh,
all?
I fought.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I fought maybe a good 2 minutes, and by then I felt something hit the left side of my face. And next thing I remember, I was waking up on the floor. They were taking my handcuffs from me and handcuffed me behind my back.
Jeez.
So.
What's going through your mind during that?
I'm dead.
Mm.
By then you kind of realize they have control and they don't like us. There's not much at that point you can do.
Right.
When you know there's that many, there's 3 of us that were inside the building at that time. There's 127 of them in there.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, if you've come this far to riot, take over this building, and hold us hostage, there's a hefty sentence that comes along with just that.
Yeah.
That will go on top of your sentence. So then what do you have to lose by taking a life?
Yeah. And especially, like I said, some of them were already in there for life.
Yeah.
And Delaware does not have a death penalty.
Mm.
So what do you really have to lose? You're going to get another life sentence added to you?
Right.
That's not going to change your judgment on things.
It's really interesting you bring that up, because when the hostage situation in 2004 took place, he was in there for 697 years. So what did he have to lose? It's a perfect example.
Nothing.
When that's the case, what are you going to do? Give me another 50 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, there was 3 inmates sentenced for the assaults and rioting. And that's pretty much what they got, was extra years, extra terms added to them that pretty much would have ended up as more of a life sentence. But
right.
You didn't phase them.
Yeah. So let's go back. All right. Now you're waking up. You've got handcuffs being put on you.
Mm-hmm.
I read that there was a distress call put out about 10:30. How long between that moment where you're waking up with the cuffs on, and if you even have an idea of time at that point, before that call probably went out?
I'm thinking the original distress call went out right around the time the altercation started.
Oh, okay. So pretty quickly. Now, do you know who sent out that distress call?
I have a thought that it was Floyd.
Okay.
But I'm not positive.
Okay. All right. So you're now waking up. You've got cuffs being placed on you. Where do they put you? What do they do at this point?
They took my keys. They took my radio. They put my handcuffs on me, and they drugged me to a closet down closer towards the front of the building. Within somewhere between a minute and a few minutes,
So when you're saying the front of the building, we're talking about in this bigger area here.
Right to the right of that.
Okay.
So go forward, right in there.
Okay. So right in this area here is where they put you in a closet. How long were you in the closet?
10 hours.
10 hours.
10 hours.
All right. Walk me through. Like, I know you said, I mean, obviously, you're thinking, I'm going to lose my life at the very beginning.
Yeah.
10 hours goes by. 5 hours goes by. What's going through your mind in that closet in that time? What are you hearing? Like, what's happening during that time?
Mass chaos going on.
Okay.
I couldn't hear exactly what they were doing. We knew the fire alarms went off almost immediately after we got put in the closet. and you could see some smoke and smell it. So we knew that they had started a fire inside the building. Another officer within 1 to 5 minutes was put in the closet with me, Winslow Smith.
Okay.
And I remember asking him, "Where's our response? Where's our responders? Who's coming to get us? It's been a while."
Did you have any idea how much time had passed?
No.
No. Okay.
We could hear them moving around. We could hear things being drugged. Didn't know what. We were in a dark closet. You barely had a little bit of light coming in from underneath the door. And that was it.
Now, this was a closet for the inmates for like supplies or something like that? Or
For supplies. It was usually locked up, but
Okay.
when they took our keys, they had access to it.
Right. So there's nothing really in this closet that helps you guys in any way in there?
No.
No, right. Okay. All right. So what are your, like, are you able to gather anything from what's happening outside as far as people being released? When did, okay.
Probably about 4 hours in, they'd already asked me for passwords to computers, things like that. At first, I was like, "I'm not giving you my password." Well, Officer Smith, apparently before I ever got there, they used to have a hostage training that he had went through. So he's like, "Give them whatever they want. They outnumber us. There's nothing you're going to do.
Right.
Just give it to them."
Sure.
That's what we're told to do. That's what protocol is. You can't get in trouble for giving them
Sure.
anything. So I gave it to him.
Okay.
After about 4 hours, I believe, he was released. He tried to argue to get me released first because he was not as bad off medically as me. He wasn't losing a lot of blood.
When you say you're losing a lot of blood from an impact, from a
Yeah,
cut?
from
Okay.
an impact to my face.
Okay.
I mean, by then they had a pillowcase over my face, over my head, and you could tell that it was drenched in blood.
You could just feel it. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, 10 hours in this closet. I know I'm sure all kinds of horrible things are going through your mind. It seems like during the hostage negotiations, you get involved in these calls, and I guess the prisoners seem to kind of like use your communication with the negotiators to almost help move things along.
Yeah.
We're gonna play a clip in a second where you get pretty. I mean, obviously this is taking a toll on you already, so obviously you're emotional and things are stressful. So we're gonna play a clip in a second where you're asking the negotiators to hurry up. At what point do you get involved, and at what point do the prisoners have you get involved with the negotiations?
I don't know how far in it was, but I remember after Officer Smith got released, they started coming back into the closet and either, I guess, pretty much putting the radio up to my face and telling me, "This is what you're going to tell them. This is what you're going to say. You're going to tell them they need to give us this. Otherwise, it's your ass."
Yeah. So it seemed like at that point, was it just you and Sergeant Floyd left as hostages at that point?
And Miss May.
And Miss
Patricia
May. Okay. Yep, I do remember them mentioning her, which they didn't really assault or hurt her, right?
From what we were told later, 3 inmates took her into a cell. I don't know on which tier. We don't really have much on her whereabouts. We didn't really hear or see from her. But later on we found out from her that 3 inmates took her in a cell and wouldn't let anybody in.
Nice.
So.
Wow. Trying to wrap your head around just like the reality of the situation in those moments has got to be just unreal. I mean, Did you think, like, was there any time, like, you're just like, this is just a dream, this is just not happening, there's no way this is happening, but...
Oh, no, you kind of knew. Once
Yeah.
you felt the head and face and being handcuffed behind your back and...
Yeah. Gosh.
Unfortunately, not even your worst dream could be that realistic.
Wow. Now, at any point did you have contact with Sergeant Floyd during the situation?
We could hear him in the next closet as they beat him, but that was about it.
Okay.
He was right literally in the room next to us.
Now, did you have any reason to believe that he was in the condition that he ended up being in?
I mean, we can tell that they were beating him quite a bit, but we didn't know exactly what they were doing to him, what they were beating him with, things like that.
Was there, after the initial attack on you, was there continued assault on you
Yeah.
after that? Okay.
I was stabbed in the closet. I was randomly beaten. They threw burning blankets in on me and Officer Smith. All kinds of crap.
Wow. Now, so when these burning blankets are being thrown in on you guys, you have no reason why. You have no. They're not saying anything to you during that time. They're not giving you any. Okay. So let's fast forward again. You're coming out of they're bringing you out, and they're getting you involved with the negotiations. At this point, are you feeling like there's some kind of hope? Are you feeling a little bit more hopeful?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, at that point, they kept me in the closet. They would come in, they'd put the radio in my face, they'd tell me what I was going to say,
Okay.
and then they'd key it up. When they were done with me, they'd either beat me or just leave.
Okay. Chris, if you can, let's play this clip, and I just want to, kind of let the viewers kind of hear the seriousness in this situation.
Let's make sure that these phones get on. But do you all understand that when y'all come out that door, that y'all have to follow all the orders that the people who are out there to receive you all give you? Are you aware of that? Those that can raise their hands need to be up. Those that are tied behind their back, they have to make sure they follow the orders, right?
We understand that we have to follow the orders of the ones that are out
This
there
is you right
as
here,
soon as
right?
we come out. When the phones are on, they will lead me to the door. Do you understand?
All on the same sheet of music. I will love when a well-oiled plan comes together.
I'm allowed to get out of here sometime tonight before my life gets taken, if you will please.
Understand your concern, and believe me when I tell you, we're working.
Tired of hearing working it. I am bleeding out. I need medical attention. You need to get it together now before I get it out. Hey, White.
Come in.
Well, White, we got anybody at the door, right?
Wow. So, obviously, first of all, I understand. If I was in that situation, I'd be telling them too. Like, I would, you're getting smart with them because they're saying, I love it when a well-oiled plan comes together. And you're like, I would love it if I could get the heck out of here because it seems like, I mean, and again, I don't want to assume because I've never been a hostage negotiator or anything like that, but it is like, it doesn't seem like they really understood the seriousness. I don't think they had any indication that you guys were as hurt as badly as you were, or
I think by then they had more indication than what they let on.
Right.
By the time
it just doesn't seem like the urgency's there.
By the time Winslow came out, he argued with the inmates in charge and told them, "Why don't you release him first? He's not doing good."
Right.
And they refused. They got along with him. He was the type of officer that didn't bring a grudge into it, didn't have a chip on his shoulder. It was, this is the rule. Here it's written, no hats in the building. It's painted on the wall.
Right.
I don't make these rules, but if I don't enforce them, they come down on me.
Correct.
For what? And then they'd be like, oh, okay, I understand. I'm not trying to give you a hard time.
Right.
You're not being disrespectful, but if you don't say something, you're going to get the shit end of the stick.
And it seemed like so from what I've read, the inmates that organized this had 17 correctional officers, lieutenants, sergeants, whatever the positions were. They had 17 people that they felt needed to be fired from their positions because of the way that they were treating the inmates. And before we got on camera, you had said that you definitely witnessed some of that with other people and things like that as well. Did you have, so you're saying that Winslow Smith was probably not one of those people on that list, and that's why the inmate said, let's get him free.
Yeah.
Okay. And they didn't really have this relationship with you to judge you one way or the other, really, right? Because you're pretty fresh into the career. So they had this list of all these different inmates, and they had these demands, and from what their demands were, what were they asking for, and what did they get versus what they asked for and just never got?
I don't even really know much of what their demands were.
Besides, like the phone, like
Yeah,
I know they
I
wanted the
know
water
that-
on.
Yeah, I
and
know that the phones and water was part of me getting released.
right.
I've been told they demanded for the governor to show his face at the prison, the
Right.
president to show his face at the prison,
Right.
More programming, better schooling and education, things like that. But I have no clue what they've done with that since.
Yeah. And so, but again, and during the negotiations, the only thing they really got was the phones and the water, right? I mean,
Yeah.
just seems so pointless a position. All right, let's move forward. At what point did they finally release you, and did you get released prior to the building being overturned again or retaken?
I was released around 8:30 that night.
Okay.
So
And
about
this-
10 hours in
Okay.
for the phones and water being turned back on.
Okay. All right.
So they didn't take back the building till I think somewhere around 5 o'clock the next morning.
Okay. And when you were released, you were the last hostage behind Floyd, besides Floyd?
Besides Miss May, she
was still in there.
Yeah, she was in there the entire time until they took back the building the next morning.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. And so when you finally get released, how did that get negotiated, and at what point did you get released?
Well, I mean, it took them a while to get the phones on. Apparently, they were having problems getting the phones turned on. The water, I don't think, was as much of a problem.
Okay.
But the phones was apparently
Seemed like it.
they were having problems getting them on.
Yeah.
When they finally did, they gathered up a group of inmates and got me to the door and took me out into the yard.
Now, I'm sure you've listened to these negotiations yourself, and during the negotiations, whichever inmate it was that was talking with the negotiators the most, he mentions multiple times that he's going to release multiple inmates along with Floyd. And this kind of goes back and forth a little bit. They say Floyd, they say Wilkinson quite a few times. Did you have any reason to believe that they were going to release Floyd before you or at all or anything like that?
No. By the time they released me, I already knew he was dead.
And you knew that how?
They made a comment to me that part of the reason this is all happening is because of the sergeant. They don't like him. I told him I'll have to take that up with him when I see him. And they told me they don't. Their exact words is, I don't think he'll be meeting you. And by then I kind of knew I had heard them beating him. I had heard him yelling and screaming as they were doing that. And then you just didn't hear from him anymore. And you kind of put two and two together.
Wow. Let's talk about the moment you get released. What's going through your mind?
Really didn't know what to think. I remember I was so dizzy and lightheaded from loss of blood, I couldn't stand up. They drugged me out to the yard. I remember, I guess it was CERT or Delaware State Police SWAT saying, how do we know that's him? I still had a bloody pillowcase over my head.
Which is a real issue, which is,
And I remember yelling out my identification number and hearing my lieutenant's voice, the lieutenant that was from my shift, still there at that time, saying that's him. And I remember at that point, within a minute, feeling arms come underneath my shoulders and pick me up.
Had you eaten or had anything throughout the day? Did they provide you with any food? Or
They did give me a honey bun.
the kindness?
Last time I've ever eaten one of them.
So you're getting released. At what point after you're released do you actually get to see your fiance at the time? I know she'd been very concerned about your whereabouts.
As soon as they lifted me up, I remember getting taken over to a gurney and getting loaded into an ambulance. And I knew the guys on the ambulance. I had worked with them at a different ambulance company.
Really?
For quite a while.
It's a small town.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was working up north in Newark with them.
Really?
But I knew both of them pretty well. They know exactly who it was when they seen me.
What were their emotions? What was their reactions?
What the hell? Covering their mouth, wondering how the hell it came to this. I mean, the last time they seen me, I was working on an ambulance with them, joking around like I always did.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of them people that I don't like grumpy people. I was
Yeah.
always
Same.
happy, always joking around,
Same.
trying to make the best of things. Some nights are good, some nights are bad. You did your thing and you went home.
Yeah.
So to go from that to them seeing me like this was a shock to the system.
I think it's
mean,
a shock to everybody's system, man. This
yeah.
is unreal. And, you know, I think, especially for everybody who does know that Sergeant Floyd, is it Sergeant or
He
Lieutenant?
was sergeant at that time. He
Okay.
was posthumously
Okay.
given lieutenant, I think, the 4th.
Okay.
He was given lieutenant.
Okay. So Sergeant Floyd lost his life, right? So
Mhm.
we know how serious this was. This wasn't just, hey, they kept me captive for a while, held me hostage for a while, and then let me go. The threat was real. Like, your life was in danger. And that's obvious to everybody listening. That's obvious to everybody who's familiar with the situation. How has this impacted you and that positive, bright-sidedness of you and your joking manner that you said you had before?
Well, I mean, a lot of people look at me a little bit differently now. People that do know what I went through and people that don't. Some people will ask me on a daily basis, hey, how are you today? My response is, hey, I'm still here on this side of the dirt, so I can't complain. I mean, when you come that close to not being here anymore, small things don't matter as much.
Josh, I use that expression all the time, and I've never had that close come with death. So how have you, like, kind of coped with this? How have you gotten through, dealing with this? Do you ever look back? I mean, how often do you reflect on it?
I don't think I've reflected on it as much recently until the anniversary came up.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be times when I think about it. I'm going to have my bad days like everyone else. A lot of times I kind of put my mind past it and look at what's in front of me, look at what I got to get done. I mean, I have 4 kids and a wife, so life stays pretty busy.
This show must go on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have my bad days. When the anniversary just came up, it was the first time I've worked since that day. Didn't bother me. My entire overnight shift got off at 8 a.m. It didn't bother me till I pulled back in my driveway. And the first thought came through my head, I made it home again.
Mm-hmm.
We'll never get to say that.
Yeah.
And that bothers me.
Do you feel like you were spared? Do you feel like your life was really in as much danger as Floyd's was, and just by chance you were the one to make it out? Do you feel like a sense of what were you spared for type of thing too?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Because it seems like, I know we've met
all
through
the time you
Officer
kind
Smitty.
of wonder why.
Right.
Why did I get spared? Why didn't he make it out?
Yeah.
That's been a question that's plagued me forever.
Why is a deep question, but when we say, okay, we were definitely spared for a reason,
Yeah.
right? Like, that to me, I think, like, hearing your story is motivating, certainly very much. I don't want to say motivating enough, but motivating enough at least to pursue and find out that why.
Yeah.
Again, I started to mention that Officer Smitty's the one that connected us, and I know that he spoke very highly of your involvement with him in the PAL program and your story and how it's impacted some of the kids as you share it. Do you find joy in that? Do you find any?
Yeah,
Is it rewarding to talk about it?
anytime you can take something negative and make a positive out of it, show people that, you know what, I've went through one of the worst things you can possibly think of. Most people could probably never really wrap their head around what happened that day.
And hopefully
what
not,
I've dealt
right?
with
Yeah, hopefully not.
since. The
Yeah.
PTSD, the TBI, it's not easy. But I'm still here. I'm still working to try to make things better.
And you're kicking ass, man. Josh, listen, for somebody to go through what you went through and to keep kicking and doing what's right for your 4 kids and for your wife and for kids you don't even know on the other side of that PAL program, that's incredible. Any last, points or anything else you want to talk about before we close out here?
I hope that the state of Delaware learns some lessons from this. I hope that things get better, and pretty much that we can all realize that no point I can ever understand what a reason there is to take someone's life. I can understand being mad at somebody.
Sure.
I can understand wanting to fight with somebody. But taking someone's life isn't something you can take back. And I don't think a lot of people realize that until they go too far. And then there's nothing you can do about it. So, if anyone can learn anything from this, everything you do has a consequence, not only on yourself, but on other people.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. It's such a truly unbelievable experience, and I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing this story with us. When it comes to the people that actually carried out this, taking over the prison, holding you hostage, what are your feelings about those people and towards those people? Is this something that your anger definitely still overwhelms you for them, or?
Not as much on my part.
Yeah.
You beat me, you thought you defeated me, but obviously I'm still here. I'm still kicking. Things get bad, things get better. It's the way life goes. The only thing that still angers me the most with them is that they took his life. I can understand being mad with a CO you don't like. I can fully understand that. It happens. There's people in life you get mad at.
Sure.
But taking his life and not letting him go home to his family is something you can never change. That's about the worst part of it for me, is realizing that I got to go home. And I don't think a lot of people understand that.
Yeah. Well, make sure that we enjoy every moment moving forward, right? Because now we know how truly blessed we are and how fortunate our lives are.
Yeah, you never know.
Josh.
No one ever expected that day that someone wouldn't make it home. A lot of officers have said that was their worst nightmare come true. Things they didn't think could ever happen. You never know. You could walk out the door today and get in a bad accident and lose your life. You could walk into a store that gets robbed and get shot. You don't know what's going to happen. Make the best of today. Make sure you tell the ones you love that you love them and how you feel, because unfortunately, you never know whether there's going to be a tomorrow.
That's right, 100%. Josh, thank you so much for coming in today, man. We really appreciate you sharing this story with us, and we're really motivated and inspired by your willingness to move forward, push on, and help others. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Josh, thanks.